Welcome to another Minds in Conversation. This is part of the series that the Minds Foundation hosts. Basically, we want to cover all, any topic that kind of relates to mental health, emotional health. And given with the current pandemic, we've had to take a lot of our live events that we do in person and bring them digital. So, so far we've had stories of those dealing with Corona and who have been in quarantine. We had a webinar looking at the arts and using that for emotion with some amazing musicians. And then now we have a topic that I think is hitting a lot of people, and it deals with dating during a pandemic. And given the very diverse and powerful response we've gotten through just the registration and the questions coming in, I have a feeling we're probably going to have to do some more webinars around this topic and around relationships and intimacy and how they're affected during this new normal. I'll stop calling it uncertain times since it's been long enough, I think. So super excited for this. For those of you that don't know, Minds Foundation is a mental health organization that's focused on providing mental wellness for all, creating a society that embraces empathy and compassion for one another. And it was started almost 10 years ago by me. And now I have wonderful people working with us like Tess Fenn, who's on this call, Andrew and Jeff, who are logging in as well, and many others. And so we're really trying to create a space to educate folks with, mental health resources and also topics of understanding. So very excited for this. And I want to first hand it over to my colleague, Tess Fenn, who is going to lead us in a short meditation. And if you've been to one of our events before, this is something we do at any event. We like to start with just a meditation to ground ourselves and get our minds and bodies really prepared to dive into the discussion. In terms of questions, a lot of you already sent a bunch in, so we will definitely be addressing as much as we can with the amazing panel we have. If you have other questions, there's a Q&A feature. Feel free to throw them in there and we'll get to it. We're also streaming live on Facebook, and so we will probably have some questions and comments coming in through that too. So I will hand it over to Tess.
Thank you, Raghu, and thank you to all of our panelists and Ken, our expert of this discussion. Your stories are so important, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So I'm going to start by playing some music, and if we can all just take a deep breath and perhaps close your eyes if that feels comfortable. So you breathe in through your nose. And just let the air naturally flow. I'm not going to prescribe a pace for your breath. Just let what feels right happen. We're coming together today to discuss a topic that involves our hearts. So maybe just pay attention to your heartbeat as it is right now. See if you can feel the rhythm. Now keep your eyes closed and perhaps put your hand on your heart. And just keep breathing naturally. Because this topic requires so much vulnerability and honesty, I thought that I would share a way that I tap into my vulnerability. And for me, that's often through writing. In August, or end of August 2018, I sat with a mentor of mine who happens to be my great uncle. And I told him about something I had written. And I want to share it with all of you today. It's called Rain Dancing. I want a love where creativity, joy, and deep connection are limitless, where vulnerability is welcomed and met without a prescribed answer, but a resolved acceptance of the messiness and contradictory nature of being human. I want a love where music and art inspire our souls and help us to feel closer to the greater mission we are a part of. I want a love where we see ourselves as pieces of art we are continuously painting. I want a love where we can, but don't have to embody the traditional man or woman, whatever that means today. I want a love where family and community are nourished and inclusive, where playtime is as important as planning and going after the dreams we set before us. I want a love where no matter what battle I'm fighting, I know I have a trusted ally by my side. I want to be trusted in return. I want a partnership where some standards and traditions of society are valued, and those that do not serve us are redefined. I do want to pick and choose and write our own rules. I want a partnership where I feel comfortable and relaxed, living in my own skin, scars, bumps, bruises, and beauty. I want to get the goosebumps all the frickin' time. I want to be supported in pursuing fearlessness, freedom, independence, adventure, and vocational fulfillment. But I want to be accepted if I fall short, become afraid in the process, or redirect course. I want a partnership that prioritizes being awake to the world's hardships, but finds energy and strength in the secret world we create together. I want a love that is both public and private, shared and kept all to ourselves. I want a love full of surprises, some practicality and some spontaneity. I want a love where we embrace our past, work proactively towards fostering the future we want, and allow ourselves to be fully alive in our present. I want a love that is dependable and loyal, harmoniously humble and proud. I want to be allowed to be afraid of the reality of the pain involved with loving someone deeply, and be allowed to fall into that at my own speed. I want a love who knows I'm going to be an exceptional mother. Flawed, yes, but always committed to learning, loving, and building empathy and character. I want to love who I would encourage my daughter to fall for. I want a friend who can dress up and dress down with me. A friend who enjoys me in my raw ripeness, but notices a new fragrance I entertain. I want a friend who will fight for me, even when the odds are not in their favor, even when I'm facing the other direction. I want a friend who knows that doing the right thing is better than doing the easy thing. I want to love a partner, a friend, to inspire and respect and pour sunshine on life with. Because we know a tribe is more powerful than an individual, and the rain is sure to come. So I want someone who will dance in it with me. Now, as we take this last breath, perhaps think about what your poem would say. It's okay to have contradictions. Just pay attention to your truth and know that there is connection around you. Now, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And inhale. Thank you for letting me share, Raghu.
All right. Well, on that note, let's dig in. Thank you so much, Tess. That was lovely. So I am truly honored for the panelists that we have today from all over New York, Denver, Hollywood, and some old close friends and some new close friends coming in. So I want to actually just hand it over to them to introduce themselves. Zach, how about we start with you?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. First of all, Raghu, thanks for having me and your foundation. My name is Zach Schlein. I am the co-founder of the video speed dating app Filter Off, and I am the co-founder of the nonprofit 18%, which is a mental health online peer-to-peer support community.
Perfect. And that's actually how Zach and I connected. It's a really awesome platform that everyone should check out, 18%. And we'll get more into Filter Off during the discussion. Paul, how about yourself?
Do I have to unmute myself?
You're good.
I'm good. Okay. Hey, it's great to be here. My name is Paul. I'm the founder of Validate, which is an early stage in development sexual wellness app that attempts to solve some problems around how we share information about our sexual health when we're dating. I entered the dating pool a couple years ago and was pretty surprised by the lack of information that was like, no one was talking about sexual health. And I understand why. It's kind of awkward, you know, at a time that you want to be promoting intimacy and getting to know someone. If you're strict about it, you should be asking questions like, are you STI negative? When were you last tested? And super awkward, can I see the results? And so Validate seeks to solve some of those problems. It allows users for the first time ever to anonymously search and find out if if they're compatible in terms of their sexual wellness before a first date. So Happy to be here and really excited to be on this panel. Thank you.
Awesome, and thanks for joining us, Paul. And I know prior to that you were working in film and cinematography for quite a number of years. So I think we can dive into how you switched careers in a way soon.
Yeah.
Abby, how about yourself?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Rosenblum. First of all, Tess, I just want to say that meditation was awesome. I feel like I was like a little nervous before this, and I'm just like, oh, I feel great. So hopefully everyone who's watching feels that way too. So I'm Abby Rosenblum. I'm the founder. Yeah, of course. I'm founder and matchmaker for the Social Modern Matchmaking. We are a Denver-based matchmaking company that's all about finding love in real life. So I really started the company just out of my own frustrations with online dating, you know, realizing that sometimes you have to swipe through so many people and chat with so many people that it's just exhausting and you might not connect with any of them. So I really just wanted to create a place where people can connect based on common values and common goals. And I kind of curate all those things. So people who are looking for something serious, who are motivated in life, who have passions, who want something long-term and something that matters and something that's real. So that's what the social does. And I also have a background in journalism. I love telling stories about female entrepreneurs and specifically female leaders in Colorado. That's a little about me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Abby. And thanks to Zach. I just muted you. There was some background noise, but thanks to Zach for connecting us as well. And Ken, truly an honor to have you on. You are really the expert in this field. You've been doing it for a long time. I mean, featured all over the place. I don't even know if I can get into the list, but people who have registered, I'm sure, have read your bio. But I know that, you started with the Deeper Dating podcast and you're working on some new things, but if you can just give us a little bit of background about yourself as well.
Sure. I'm glad to. And I just want to say, Raghu, thank you for your generosity and spirit in creating the foundation and this event.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Tess, I just want to as a gay man, I just want to acknowledge the sweet quality of inclusion that was in your meditation. And as a human being, I just want to acknowledge that too. So I just really appreciate that. So I'm a psychotherapist. I've been a psychotherapist for decades and decades. And I am the author of a book called Deeper Dating, How to Drop the Games of Seduction and Discover the Power of Intimacy. I'm the host of the Deeper Dating podcast and the creator with my husband of a new event and website, which is going to be launched called Deeper Dating Online, which is a way for people to meet in a very values-based, connected way. So professionally, those are the things that I do. But my story is a story of really wanting love and really being chronically single for decades and having to become a student of what wasn't working and what I needed to learn. And I think we're all students of intimacy, and that is a beautiful and rich thing. And so as I learned what I was doing wrong, one thing I learned was so much of that came from the things I was taught that just did not help me at all. So I kind of tried to teach a path whereby people came to realize that the skills of dating are just the skills of intimacy. And those are the most beautiful and important skills of all. So I'm just really happy to be here and be a part of this and, hopefully listen to all of you, weave together your thoughts, offer some thoughts of my own, and I'm just honored to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, you know what, let's just dive into it. So, a major topic that has been coming up, and this is not only COVID times, but I think we can address it from both angles here. How do we cut the small talk and actually dive deeper into the conversations and the intimacy? And, some of the questions that came in, more related to the pandemic time is how do you keep a conversation going during a date during this time? And what do men and what do women consider to be romantic or fun during this time period? And any of you can jump in on that to start.
I'll start on this one since, I'm setting up tons of dates every day and trying to help people feel like they can connect virtually, because in most cases, I think virtual dates are really the norm. I know some people are maybe going for a walk in the park or a picnic, but for a first date, it definitely is really hard to feel that connection virtually. It's even different for us here being virtual rather than if we could feel each other's energies if we were in the same room.
Yeah.
So I really work with my clients to set an intention for the date. And I do this whether it's now or, during normal times of maybe it's just to laugh, or maybe it's to find out something new, or maybe it is to, really dive into a deeper topic on the first date. You don't have to do anything that you wouldn't, want to talk about on a first date. But I really tell people, it's fine. Get the small talk out of the way, find out where they're from, what they do, what they like to do. If you're in Colorado, if you like to ski, but maybe ask those deeper questions that are super unexpected. Like, what's one of your favorite memories when you were a kid? Or, what do you like doing to bond with your friends or your parents or something like that? So I think, people are doing a lot of Zoom calls, and sometimes it's a lot of, how's it going? How are you feeling? So just switch it up and ask some different questions.
Yeah, I love that. And, to add on to that, I think, Zach, you've created an interesting platform of video dating and kind of mixing the integration of the traditional swipe app, but getting deeper. This is a question for all of you, but maybe Zach, you can start off. What types of emerging patterns are we seeing in the dating field during this pandemic?
Yeah, I think so. It was interesting. So I'll give you a little background on what inspired me, and you'll see how it's kind of this pandemic, how it's brought about virtual dating. So, I would go on dates, and sometimes I would meet women and realize very quickly I wouldn't vibe. And I was like, wow, that was a waste of time. I had to swipe, I had to send messages back and forth, I had to get to that destination, spend an hour. So yeah, I would basically would ask like, hey, would it be cool if we just jump on a FaceTime? And this was a few years back. And most actually said no. And a few, I would say half would be like, hey, we could jump on a call. And I feel like from a level of like authenticity and like connection, kind of what Abby was sharing, like in person, obviously the best. But the challenge with that is it takes time because you have to actually meet in person, like to get to that destination. But right before that is video. So you can authentically connect through a video, and you can get a feel of who that person is and a vibe. And below that is phone call, and below that is text. Like with a text message, you could be a great texter. You could be a horrible texter. You can't get a feel. And sometimes you think you have a feel, and then when you actually meet them, you're like, wow, that was not what I was expecting. So I think with this pandemic, it's really had people start getting very comfortable with video and getting comfortable with meeting strangers over video. And that's, filter off is video speed dating with dates, with the goal of creating romantic, authentic connections. So, that's kind of the background and how I see dating and virtual dating going forward. And I think even post-pandemic, people are starting to realize like, wow, being on video is like a really cool, authentic, and also an efficient experience. So I see this to continue.
Yeah, I love that. I think that it's something that maybe a lot of us, who are single and dating, we're feeling is similar to what you're saying, right? You swipe and swipe and swipe, and you're like set these dates up, and how do you really know that you'll connect with somebody? And so how do you know if someone is, how do you recognize someone being genuine and available not just physically, but emotionally now, when we have all of these physical distancing aspects in play, and, building that degree of trust. And now we've gone to Zoom and to filter off and apps to use to connect with one another. And, are people being respectful of that? And how do we look past sort of the guilt and the pressure and the filter and trying to figure out someone's character through all of this? I think that's something that's come up quite a bit in this time, is when we don't have physical presence with one another and we're doing this dating at a distance, how can you actually have those conversations about the trust and the safety and not feel pressured? I don't know if any of you have conversations with your friends or anyone or thought about this, but I'd love to.
Can you define pressured?
I think the pressure, on the one hand, we are hearing public health guidelines of distancing and face masks and so forth. But the pressure of even just meeting up to the pressure of getting physical during this time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's almost just about setting, every relationship you have to set boundaries. And I think right now it's just about setting those different boundaries, of like, make sure you are comfortable with whatever you're doing, whether it's during a pandemic or not. And I think it is sometimes difficult to set those boundaries too. And maybe Ken has a little more insight into kind of the thought process behind all that. But I think it's almost a positive that you can really tell if someone is genuine right now, because we have so much time on our hands, even if you're super busy, you have an extra free time right now. So you can kind of tell, is this person making me a priority? Because right now there are no excuses of, oh, I have this work happy hour, or I'm busy tonight out with friends. We know you're not.
Sure.
I think it's so true. But I also think that we have a tremendous ability to pick up on people. I think, all of us panelists now can feel and enjoy each other's energy just really simply. And there's a wonderful novelist. Her name is Laurie Colwin. And she talked about two people meeting, and they had an interaction that was awkward, but they got married and they got divorced. And she said, in those 5 minutes, they could have told their entire future together, but neither of them wanted to notice it. And so, I think that we have such awareness and sensitivity. If people are pushing our boundaries, that's really worth noticing, immediately. Our sensitivity, I think, is infinitely greater than we give ourselves credit for. And we can start picking up on feelings the first moment. And we shouldn't second guess ourselves that much, because we actually usually are right. And that's a tremendous gift. And when all you see is the screen in front of you and this one person's face, there's a lot less distraction. You really can pick up a ton.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Paul, I know, we talked about this a little bit to a degree.
On that, I don't have firsthand experience with dating during COVID-19, because on a dating app about a year ago, I met a girl who is my girlfriend now, and we are quarantining. But I do have a good friend that I like, an interesting story, because he's single, and he's a pretty sexually active guy in according to him, in his pre-COVID-19. And he was freaked out and he was following all the things, and then he realized, he was like, wow, I don't know how long this is gonna go for. Am I willing to be celibate for however long this lasts? And what's interesting is, this is a great thing for this, are we being asked to be celibate right now? Is my friend who's single and quarantining single asked to be celibate right now? And, he came to the determination with a woman that he met on one of the apps, that they wanted to meet up in real life and be intimate, and their rules around that were, we had both been quarantined for 14 days, and and we did it, and it was great for both of us, and we'll probably do it again. And he's fine with that. I don't have any. I think it's important to I think people can get really kind of judgmental during these times. And what I respect about their choice is that they both did it mutually. It was, there was some thought about it, and, and I can see how difficult it would be. Like in LA, they just announced that this is gonna, shelter in place is gonna be through July or August, 3 more months, right? So if I were in a position where I was a little bit more conservative than that and had said, I'm going to not date. I'm only going to date virtually until this is done. And this is supposed to be letting up May 15th. And I just found out from Newsom that it's going to go, or from LA local officials, this is going to go into August. I'd be like, whoa, that's a lot longer time. So it was an interesting story, I think, about someone who kind of came up with his own, ethics around it. That was a little bit more on the liberal side, I would say.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. No, and I totally understand that. I think that as a organization, we're going to definitely promote that everyone here should be following their local guidelines and public health officials. But I think something to think about then is, you're correct. Are we being asked to be celibate, right? If you are single, and what are the rules around that? And along those lines, how do you keep someone engaged, and how do you stay engaged with someone if you can't physically meet with them, right? And I think that pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, maybe this is somehow related to long distance relationships, right? Where you had that distance, and there could be things we learned from that. So these are some questions that actually came in and I love the way it's phrased, right? Pen pals are great for middle school, but some people might be home through August. And so collecting pen pals that might disappear after 6 weeks of testing, texting, how do you deal with that? And I think that question I want to address to all of you. And then someone sent one in as well about what about understanding if someone just wants to be your quarantine girlfriend or boyfriend and maybe not after? So kind of thinking about engaging a relationship without the physical, but also engaging a relationship that might be developing during this pandemic. And how do you sustain that?
Yeah, this may answer both, but I think in terms of pen pals, it depends, and you'll get a feel, as Ken had shared, of whether this person is actually interested in you. And again, you can propose video dates, right? Jump on a FaceTime or a video or any sort of video chat. And I think that's just a great way to build a rapport, build chemistry, and see if you're a fit for one another. And if you are, it'll probably be these types of dates every night, potentially. I don't want to say what it will look like, but if you'll get a feel if they're not really interested in you, or if they keep blowing you off, then they're probably not that into you. So I think it's kind of like a numbers game, like in real life. Try to meet as many people, and based off the odds, you'll find someone who hits it off with you and you hit it off with them, and just keep video dating like in real life. And I think, again, by video dating, it's efficient. If after 5 minutes you realize this is not a fit, you could always be like, hey, I have to leave, versus a real date. After 5 minutes, it's tough to get out. So I would just treat it like real life and get a feel, like Ken had shared.
Yeah.
And I kind of
what I wanted to
I kind of wanted to address sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just going to talk about the whole celibacy thing, and how, are we being asked to be celibate? And I feel like right now it almost having that sexual or more intimate connection almost is just taking a different form. I think just because you can't physically be together having sex doesn't mean that you can't, connect on that same level. I don't think I really need to outline it on here. Totally can if everyone wants me to. But think about how people in long distance relationships, what do? It's basically kind of we're all kind of having to, just like every business is having to pivot and transition right now, kind of how we're dating and how we connect with people is also having to transition, you know. And I think about, like, if your love language is physical touch, and I think we all appreciate physical touch, you know, one of my best friends, she's like, I just want to hug you, like I just want to have a hug because I literally haven't touched a person, you know. And it's like, well, even for a hug, do we both feel comfortable with that? Talk about that. Or what are other ways that we can connect? Like maybe it's even just spending more time together, or telling each other we care about each other, whether it's a friendship, romantic relationship, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
So
Paul.
what I'm hearing, teasing this out maybe, is that it sounds like we are being asked to not, if we're single and sheltering in place, to not, to be celibate for as long as that lasts. And connect over video or whatever, however, you know, intimate you want to get digitally, but not to, like, does that seem, because I know that, you know, not everyone's going to do that, obviously. And then do they feel shame, or like, the guy that told me that he did that, we're very good friends, right? But he probably would have mixed feelings about telling someone else that he doesn't know so well. I don't know. But so does it seem like we are being asked that? Not all the way.
Yeah, it's tough. And you know, I don't want to dive too much into the rules and the regulations that are in place, but I'm sure a lot of people who are dating are trying to figure out when is the time to meet and how do we do that. And prior to that, I'd love to get, you know, maybe Abby or Zach or Paul or any of you. Abby, I know you're still setting up a lot of couples and dates right now. Can you give some examples of like some fun dates or activities that people can do virtually, you know, prior to meeting up?
Yeah, totally. It's funny, as we speak, I have 2 Zoom dates going on, so I had to make an extra Zoom account for them so that they could go into my meeting room. So yeah, I think, you know, the first thing I tell people is, like, on a first date, bring a drink or bring a snack or bring something. That alone, you could talk about it if you're not sure what to say. But kind of beyond that, I feel like there are so many cool and creative things. You just kind of have to think outside the box. So maybe it's even ordering the same restaurant, and, you know, that kind of creates a bond with both of you. There's so many cool online experiences. I know there are cooking classes. Well, they'll deliver the food to you. They'll even deliver food to both locations if you aren't together, and then you can cook together, talk about it. You know, it's really just about getting creative, even in my own relationship. You know, my fiance and I have been trading off planning dates for each other on Friday nights, and they're not anything extravagant. But, you know, he planned a sushi date and just got all of my favorite food from my favorite restaurant and planned ahead, and he watched an animated movie with me, which is a big thing because he does not watch those.
That's great. Zach or Paul, do you want to add anything on that?
I think Abby shared enough for me personally.
Yeah, here's something that I've also been thinking about. You know, and Elena, who's on, has sent it through. There's Zoom fatigue, right? I think we spend a lot of the day, if you're working from home, on meetings and work. And how, like, you know, we're saying that people have the time, right, to get on these dates. But sometimes I think at this point, especially, a lot of people are just getting tired of being on video calls all day. And can you talk a little bit about that, about how to sort of balance that? Because, you know, people are on video calls for school or work or whatever it is all day, and then you're trying to be fully engaged and you're physically seeing yourself the whole time you're on the date.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is when you're on a computer screen for a long time, it kind of just puts you in a weird, not weird state, but like in this like funk. So what I like to do, like especially when it's nice out, just taking a walk outside, and I actually really enjoy making social calls. on walks outside when it's sunny. I just get in a much better mood. And then, I mean, working out as well helps me tremendously. I don't know if this totally answers your question, but this kind of just breaks up the same type of thing throughout the day. And I feel like when you mix it up with like exercise and getting some sun, it really does make a big difference mentally, and then also just in general.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Elena. You're doing all of it. It's listen, Elena, it's a very tough time. And I think that it's challenging, but I think what Zach, is suggesting is something that if we're able to do it can be helpful, but it's very tough, especially we're over 3 months in at this point. So, yeah, thank you for that, Zach. I want to dive a little bit into emotional connection with ourselves and others. So briefly, just to kind of go into that part, I'm going to try to screen share something here, and hopefully the Zoom doesn't crash. Can you guys see this slide? Okay, excellent. Yes. So this is a really interesting concept that I know many people might have seen, but we think about sort of attachment theory when it comes to relationships, and primarily as an adult there's 4, but really they stem from child psychology, where we look at childhood attachment and how that actually forms and translates into being an adult. So I think secure attachment, we all know a lot about. This really develops when a child in infancy is they're having their needs met, they're having the adequate love and affection that they desire and want, and they start to feel very comfortable around themselves, and with their peers and loved ones. And as an adult, what this leads to is that they can trust fairly easily and communicate their needs really well, set those boundaries that we talked about very well. But at the same time, they're also not afraid to leave a bad relationship if they think that they need to. So they can have that self-protection in place. So obviously what this means for romantic partnerships is that they would make some of the best romantic partners. They're capable of accepting rejection without detrimental effects and moving on despite pain. And they're also very, very comfortable at expressing their needs, right? And their interests and affection. So a lot of the research shows that about half of the population, at least, tends to have secure attachment, right? Which is a good thing. The next is this anxious attachment. And this usually happens when infants do receive love and care, but it's sort of unpredictable, or it goes in and out. And so they tend to have generally a positive view of their peers, but they have a negative view of themselves. And it really, what happens is that self-esteem is not there as much, and they tend to be very nervous and stressed out about relationships. And these are the kinds of folks, who they need that reassurance and the affection from their partner on a regular basis. And they have a really hard time being alone or single. So you might see them going through a lot of unhealthy or abusive relationships, or moving from relationship to relationship. They have some trouble trusting people, right? Because growing up, they did get love, but then it would go away, and then they would get it and it would go away, and there was no consistency. So a lot of this makes sense. We can think about this as something being like the girl who calls you like 30 times in a night, right? Because she's worried you didn't call her back or respond to a text. Or the guy who follows the girlfriend to make sure she's not flirting with other men. So they have that anxiety that's stemming from within them. And the reason I bring up a lot of these attachments is that the point is not that you fit into one category or another, right? It is a spectrum, but you tend to have more of one, and that might be dominant in you. And if we can recognize it, it allows us to work on it and know when things are coming up and kind of fit into your relationship and understand where it's stemming from. We have avoidant attachment as well, which is developed when a lot of babies and infants are neglected, right? So they get their basic needs met, so food, for example, but they're not held enough, perhaps. And they tend to have a negative view of a lot of others. as well, but they might have a positive view of themselves. And so what really happens is it makes it very, very difficult for them to develop intimate relationships and actually accept emotional support. This is the person who, is working 80 to 100 hours a week, and they tend to get annoyed when the person they're dating wants to see them like once a weekend, right? Or it's the person who dates a handful of people in the course of a year and doesn't really want anything serious, and they end up sort of ditching once they get tired of the person. And so I think we all know people who fit into a lot of these different categories or have traits from these different categories. The avoidant, they will complain of feeling very crowded or like suffocated, and they always have an exit strategy in the relationship. And so, I think we know a lot of this. And then we have a mix of anxious and avoidant. Typically, this is from very terrible, neglected households or abusive households. It's not as rare, but this can lead to pretty, messy, dysfunctional relationships. They're not only afraid of intimacy and commitment, but they really distrust and they can lash out emotionally at anyone who comes close to them. We can think a little bit about anxious avoidant with overlapping slightly with borderline personality traits as well. And so again, what I want to stress, and the reason I bring this up is not to say that you're one category. It's that let's have an understanding of this. And can you actually shift once you understand your attachment? And I think this is where, if you recognize it and you see what you want to work on, it's where therapy can really be helpful. And that's really one of the beauties of therapy, is that you're not stuck just because you're in one of these categories. You can start to work through it and start to work on where it's coming from and actually understand your relationships a little bit more. And so that's why I bring it up. And, I hope that's helpful to some degree. A really important question that came through is, how do you recommend translating an emotional connection you've built virtually into physical intimacy? But also, more importantly, based off what I just said, how do you deal with I'm trying to think of the best way to say that, but it's, how often have you witnessed someone basically shy away from a relationship because they believed it would make very clear how much work they have to do for themselves? So it's this concept of balancing self-love with allowing love in. And I know that was all a ton of information, so.
Well, I'll say just one thing about self-love is something that I've really been trying to promote to all the people that I work with, because we have the opportunity now to really reflect on ourselves and work on those pieces of ourselves that maybe we don't love as much. And, I've kind of seen the transformation in a few people of, like, when you even accept the pieces of yourself that you're not such a huge fan of, you're going to be able to, have someone else also accept those pieces and be able to accept, whatever the flaws of someone else too. So, I don't think that work is ever really done. It's probably something that you have to work on forever. But I think just when you put that confidence and energy out into the world, you're going to attract it back. That's just how it works. If you are a miserable, depressed, insecure person, it's going to be really hard for you to attract someone who's confident and amazing and wants to love you and loves themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's this idea that until you love yourself and you're at this degree, you're not ready to let someone enter in, which I don't necessarily agree with, because I think you can grow with another person. But
yes. I think that there's this concept that anything other than the secure attachment style means you're kind of screwed. And you just have to get it together or find a partner who's so secure that they could be your lifeboat. And I just want to say, in every one of those categories, there are deep emotional gifts that don't exist in the other categories. People who are highly sensitive are often anxious in their attachment style. People who deeply value independence and are really fierce might seem avoidant, but they might not be. In every one of those categories, there's a gift that maybe we didn't learn how to honor yet. And even the people with secure attachment styles, they might choose security over risk and adventure in their interactions. So, all of us in any of those categories, we need a user's manual for ourselves, where we love ourselves, where we understand what the gift is, and we know how to hold that in the relationship. So you could be in any one of those categories and be available for a relationship with just a set of tools of learning how to understand what's really going on for you, what your minefields are, and how to work with those minefields as opposed to get rid of them. Yeah, we need a user's manual for ourselves.
I love that. That could be a tangible action that we do from this webinar.
Good point. Yeah. And just to say one quick thing about that, in the places where you're the most insecure, your deepest gifts lie. And that's an amazing adventure to figure that out. The places you're the most insecure are connected to the absolute most beautiful, passionate, vulnerable parts of you. That's like a secret of humanity.
I love that. I love that. I'll put this out there for you, Ken. Maybe at the end you can kind of summarize it in, but we did get a few questions about dealing with emotional disturbances that come up with your partner during this time period of the pandemic. And people are spending much more time together at home. There's no separation of work and home. I know we're focusing a little bit more on the step before that of dating, but I think it could be something to incorporate in the closing. Just a few more questions I'll throw out there. Abby, you mentioned, people have time right now, which is true, unless you're a frontline worker, I will say. How do you explain, let's talk about flakiness and ghosting and follow-up. What's going on there? Are we seeing it rising? Are we seeing it decreasing? How do you deal with that when that happens? You went on an awesome date and then it just dwindles. I think a lot of people now with Filter Off, with other apps, with Zoom, they maybe are doing more dates, right, through video. But what's the follow-up with that?
Yeah, I think, ghosting is a problem, whether it's a pandemic or not. I feel like there could be a zombie apocalypse and people would still ghost. So I just think that, right now, even though people do have time, we don't really have excuses. So a lot of the times you can say, oh, I'm just really busy with work right now. I just don't really have time to commit to a relationship. Sorry, am I still here? Okay. So people say like, I don't have time to commit, or, I just have this other thing. I'm going on this big trip. I want to save money. I think that people rely on those excuses to kind of say, oh, I just wasn't feeling a connection. Whereas now it's like, okay, well, I have to face this reality of I just wasn't feeling it with you. So, that's part of why with my business, no ghosting is a rule. If anyone ghosts, they get kicked out. They also have to call the person that they went on a date with and explain what happened. So, I hope that, it usually doesn't come to that. But I just think that people do appreciate honesty. Even if in the moment they might be upset or hurt by what, saying that you didn't feel a connection or anything like that. I think just tell someone. You don't have to say it in a mean way, but it's so much better to just put it out there and be honest. You'll both feel better eventually, rather than we just never heard from this person and what happened. Sorry,
I love that.
My phone is.
You're good. A lot of folks I've been speaking with, I think, friends, colleagues, whoever, it's interesting because right now, and I think, Ken, you'll probably get into this soon, we're having time where the physical is not interfering with our decision making and our building of a relationship. and it's solely based on conversation and emotional connection. Do you guys think that this will last, and it's influencing what people are looking for in a partner now?
I really hope so. I mean, I think there's kind of a trend right now, like the Love is Blind show. Everyone, was really excited about that. And there's a lot of people that are recreating that because it was such a cool idea. So, obviously you have to have physical attraction. You can't have a relationship if you aren't attracted to that person. But I think we do have a unique opportunity right now to see, hey, can I build an emotional connection, and can that physical attraction come later? At least know that you like to see the person over video, but it's the opposite of how we usually work. Am I physically attracted to you? Okay, now do I like who you are as a person?
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually why I love Zach's app, because he brings together both worlds of, I keep thinking of Barney Stinson when you brought up the numbers game, Zach, but he brings together the option of meeting a lot of people through it, but through the video, which is amazing. And, Zach, just to kind of wrap it up, the main discussion here, I would love to hear, Filter Off has gone global very quickly. India, France, the US. I mean, every day I look, there's a new article from a new country. So I would love to hear from you, and I'm sure everyone else wants to hear from you, maybe some trends that you're seeing and how people are interacting and using the platform and what it's led to, like if there's been a really cool story that came out of it.
Yeah, I think, thanks for the kind words. I think what you're seeing, like the whole point of, or a lot of this discussion has been, is that people are now comfortable meeting essentially strangers over video. And what's cool too is after they're using Filter Off, they're asking, hey, do you want to jump on a Zoom call? Do you want to FaceTime? Because they're actually contacting us and saying, hey, I matched with this person on your app, and then we FaceTime for hours after, and we've been FaceTiming all the time. So like these cool success stories where before they would just be using swipe apps and get stuck in Messenger the whole time. And then out of the 100 matches you have, maybe you meet one, if that. So yeah, I think it's just seen a really high conversion in people actually wanting to meet through video and face-to-face and build that intimacy. And to address your other question, I think it will return in terms of the physical will be there. So people care, unfortunately, less about like the build up, because right now we have this pandemic, we have no ability to meet in person. I mean, most people, but I think in the future, I think it will shift back, but there will be this new opportunity where people, again, are more comfortable on video. I think people ask to FaceTime more so, which again would be hoping build that emotional connection. But I think the physical, I mean, it will obviously come back. So I think like anything, it'll restore, but allow for this new opportunity as well.
Yeah. And, Paul, I love what you're working on with Validate. I won't say too much about it, but I think that the conversation of, it's similar. You're diving deep into a very important topic, sexual wellness and health, integrated early on in a conversation, which is really important. And I know you're still building the company, so I want people to anxiously look forward to it, because I've seen it and it's pretty amazing and necessary in the dating field. And it's definitely gonna make a lot of shifts in the game. But rapid fire, 2 questions for you guys to answer down the panel. 1, give us your best conversation starter for a date. And 2, give us the best virtual date experience that someone can do that you personally found to be valuable. I'm going to start with Paul, since you haven't spoken in a while.
I'm really struggling right now.
Okay, so you have a girlfriend. So what was the best question you asked her that locked it in?
You want to build an app? He's a UX designer, so you like that actually.
It's not bad. Okay. I'll let you think a little more. Abby?
My conversation starter is definitely one you couldn't ask over text, but what makes you feel the most happy, or when do you feel the most happy? I think that says a lot about a person. And my favorite virtual date, I mean, I would definitely say the cooking class, because I love to cook. But I also did see that a lot of art museums are doing virtual tours. I think that could be really cool to do a virtual tour together, of like, you could go all around the world to different art museums.
Awesome. On that note, I want to bring up, Tess mentioned Airbnb's been doing some amazing experiences as well that are virtual that people can sign up for. Zach, the guy that made a dating app.
I mean,
what is
usually it's video. That's what Filter Off's about. You don't need to be witty and come up with this like creative one-liner. So I mean, when I'll start like on the video side, it's like, I don't know, just, I think it's important to start with small talk, just to, like, when you start on video, just to kind of ease your way into it. And then once you ease your way into it, you could start actually getting to know the person, asking them like, how have you been spending your time during this? And I think that shows a lot about the person, right? Are they, and there's nothing wrong with either way, like, are they just chilling, watching shows, or are they working on something? Like, for me, I'm attracted to people that are working on things. I mean, I think it's important to have fun and like watch movies and build those relationships, but I think it's also really cool, and it shows something about the person if they're working on like a cool side project, something creative. At least that's what I'm attracted to. So yeah, so that's how I put it. And in terms of a date, I think just like going on video, some wine, making it intimate, I think that's like the best type of experience. Or date or not date, just like taking a walk on like a beautiful day, and that just kind of like amps me up, to be honest, doing that.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Paul, one more shot for anything you want to say.
I'm good this evening. I thank you for the opportunity, but you know, amazing responses. And Abby, like, loved the idea. It's great question. I'm just gonna listen from here on out. I want to hear what Ken has to say.
Yeah, so
I love yours. I love yours because you were like, you want to build an app. And I mean, that's like, you know, that's really connected to Zach's, like, go with your passion and say, hey, let's do a project together. That really works. So I love that.
I think that's really valuable. Ken, I truly an honor to have you. You know, we had tons of questions, but I want to be respectful of people's time. And I think that you have a lot to add here, kind of bringing things together, and I will hand it over to you.
Sure. Well, I have a ton of thoughts. And I guess the first thing I want to say is we all struggle with intimacy, right? You know, and then in this pandemic, there are really hard and new challenges. And I do have to say something else too, which is that, you know, in a home where the parents are nuts, the kids aren't going to feel safe. And there's a profound vacuum of humanity and compassion in the White House. And I just really do have to say that. And I think that as a country, we're all scared because there's no good parents up there. So I do want to be really honest and say that. And I think it colors our beings to know that there's not safe leadership. So I just have to say that controversial thing. But each of us are, you know, is struggling to find a way to create healing in the presence of this, and everyone's doing it so differently. So it's just very exciting and moving to hear each person's way of doing that. And just a couple thoughts that I want to say are, one thought is that we have different circuitries of romance. And when you trigger a circuitry, that circuitry gets activated and it takes you down a particular path. And the circuitry that you activate is going to determine, like, even things like who you're sexually attracted to, who you notice, who you talk to, how you act. So apps that, Zach spoke about, like a hierarchy of connectedness. And the simple formula is this: the more connected you are, the more chance there is that you're going to engage a circuitry of depth. And that circuitry, when you connect like that, is going to make you much more likely to make good choices and to be available for intimacy. When you're swiping really quick, you're in another circuitry. And that circuitry is what turns me on right now. Who do I know that, like, right now I would want to sleep with? Whether I do or I don't, who's like hot to me? And that's a really quick circuitry. And research shows that the people that were the craziest turned on to, like, from right away, that's often because unconsciously we see that they have the same qualities that hurt us as children. And we want to go back to the scene of the crime to finally be loved right, which is not such a great kind of thing. And that's that scratch the itch circuitry. So the more we connect in deeper ways with the people we date, the more we feel into them, the more we're authentic, the more we're going to use a circuitry that's going to be so much more likely to help us find healthy love. So that's just one point that I want to make. And another point I want to make is I was interviewing for my podcast. I was recently interviewing a relationship coach who I love. His name is Jordan Gray. And I said to him, so, like, how do we handle all this video stuff? How do we bring real authenticity to it? And he had a really simple answer that I love. He said, you up-level the authenticity. You go for real. You go for vulnerable. The kind of stuff you'd be afraid to share, you share pretty quick. Not like embarrassing stories from your childhood necessarily, but the parts of you that you feel timid to reveal, you share, and you share pretty quickly. And I love that. I think that's really cool. So we up-level the authenticity. Another thing that I love what Abby said about, like, this concept of when you think, like, am I sexually attracted? Am I turned on right away? That's a good question. That's a fair question. But when your question is, does this person inspire me? And of course I have to be turned on, but do they inspire me by who they are? You completely shift your search for love. If you can ask yourself, does my heart kind of feel safe with this person? Do they have a quality of integrity and goodness that inspires me? When you make that your big question, your future changes. It's true and it's real. Of course, you have to be sexually attracted. I'm not saying be with anybody if you're not turned on to them ultimately, because, that's not good for anybody. And speaking of turn on, I want to say something about Eros, which is, I just really want to encourage everybody to think of Eros in a richer and more dimensional way. So, like, you're with somebody on a video date and you notice his or her hair or nose or eyes or laugh. Let yourself feel Eros. Don't think that just because you can't meet them that you can't be really in your erotic self. You can, and it's fun and it's great. And people set up a guideline where I don't get to be in my erotic energy until I actually meet. But we don't have to do that. I'm not talking about being inappropriate or going for immediately sexual stuff. I'm talking about the erotic component, which is beautiful. It's like a gorgeous flavor, a gorgeous spice. And so I just want to say, allow yourself to have that and enjoy it. Another thing is that playing hard to get doesn't work. It might make somebody, especially somebody who's not really available, want you more, but it's going to make everyone like you less. And the research actually shows that the more you show that you really like someone, that's actually an aphrodisiac. So it's another point I want to make. Let's see. So something I want to say, this is a really interesting thing, is that, like, the way that we are in online dating, actually the dilemmas of this kind of virtual world replicate the dilemmas of a long-term relationship. and in a really interesting way. Because like when you're in a long-term relationship, you have to make an effort to be more vulnerable. You have to make an effort to get in touch sometimes with your erotic self. You have to make an effort to get through the difficult points. And so, you know, here you are dating someone, all the skills that you need and you should be learning now in your virtual dating life are going to really help you when you're in a relationship, because the skills of dating are the skills of intimacy, and the skills of virtual dating, they're the skills of intimacy. They really, really are. So I think that those were points that everyone was making. And I think, you know, Abby, you made those really beautifully. And I think, like, you know, Paul, you talked about something really hard and, you know, really important and really honest. And risky conversation sparks eros. It really does. And that's a beautiful, important thing. And, you know, Zach, you keep speaking about connect, just connect, just connect. And I think that's, you know, that's the essence. And I think that's why your work is achieving such kind of, such excitement, because that's what you're saying. You're saying just connect. See if there's anything. Oh, yeah. One other thing I just want to say is that, you know, the concept of problems in relationships, there's a beautiful concept, which is that all intimacy is a process of rupture and repair. You feel hurt, you do something about it. You feel like your partner doesn't get you, or they missed something you said, you say something about it. You realize that you weren't there for them, you do something about it. And the beauty of love is the beauty of rupture and repair. And we all have to get more skilled at acknowledging the rupture and then doing the repair. So this is a time that we can all build love and intimacy. You can find a really powerful, amazing relationship and go real. Let all these parts of you come out, and virtually you can find yourself in a really amazing relationship. So use those skills. Don't hold back. Really use the skills of love, and don't think you have to wait, because, you know, we always tell ourselves we have to wait, but we don't have to wait. It's that act of really up-leveling our authenticity. So I think those were the thoughts that I wanted to share. I think there's a lot of hope, and all of us can be learning a lot about the skills of love, and everything we learn now is going to help us later.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Mhm.
I just want to add that on that note, everyone deserves to be loved. And the reason that Minds exists is to ensure that everyone is loved by the community around them, and that we're in this together. And if we needed any proof that we're all in this together as one global community and one unified consciousness, well, nature just threw a pandemic at us. So we are all connected as a collective, and everyone does deserve love. And the thought that I am not deserving or I am not ready for it, it's crossed my mind, it's crossed other people's minds that I know. I think just allow the connection in and allow yourself to be vulnerable. And you all spoke about that in many, many ways, gave lots of techniques that people can do for themselves to address that. And Ken, your thoughts are, I really don't know what else to add to it. I mean, they were very powerful and just brought everything together so well. And love is a broad definition, so let's not forget that. And I'm truly honored to have all of you on this call, this webinar. Thanks for everyone who joined in. I think we have a lot more we can talk about, I'm sure. And we will keep coming up with topics. So definitely everyone check us out at mindsfoundation.org. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of that. Our next webinar, I'm also quite excited about. Next Wednesday, May 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to be talking about overcoming addiction and sort of the way forward. And pretty amazing panel, including David Sheff who wrote Beautiful Boy. There's also a film about it. Carol Arnold, who's going to be speaking as well about her work in the field, and Dave Marin, who has a personal story and wrote an amazing book about recovery. So that's going to be a very fruitful discussion, and we will keep these going. I think we're going to need some more webinars around relationships and intimacy moving forward. So thanks everyone for joining in. Always open to feedback. Just reach out to us. Thank you, Zach, Paul, Abby, Ken, Tess, for opening us up with such a deep, vulnerable, loving poem and meditation.